Good morning. This meeting of the Baltimore City Council Health, Environment, and Technology Committee is now called to order. I'm Danielle McCray, Councilwoman representing the 2nd District and also Chair of the committee. In attendance, we have members of the committee, which would be Councilman Ron Dorsey from the 3rd District. And from the Mayor's office, we have, I'm drawing a blank, with Tyler Scanella. Also with us is our committee staff member, Trey Hayes. Before we get started, I just want to ask everyone to please take a moment to turn off or silence your cell phones. And today the committee is going to be holding a hearing on, we're going to be holding 2 hearings. The first hearing is going to be Council Bill 23-0367, gas-powered debris removal equipment for the purpose of prohibiting the use of gas-powered debris removal equipment in Baltimore City, defining certain terms, establishing procedures for reporting the use of gas-powered debris removal equipment, establishing certain penalties, and providing for a special effective date. At this time, we're going to hear from the sponsor of the bill, which is going to be Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks everybody for being here. And thank you, Tyler, for working on this with me, the Mayor's office. With at least 6 such bills passed in Maryland and DC's ban having been in effect since 2022, and over 120 other such bills having been passed across the country, bills along these lines are now commonplace, banning the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. This bill says debris removal devices. The Department of Legislative Reference can probably explain why we called it that rather than leaf blowers. But let's be clear about what we're talking about. If you are a private residential owner and you've purchased a leaf blower in the past few years, it was almost certainly battery powered. 85% of what Home Depot offers and sells is battery powered and is comparable to gas powered devices in its ability. When I introduced this bill and spoke on it, I presented it more or less solely from the perspective of the visceral reaction that so many people have when their quiet and peace of mind are disrupted by obnoxious noise, whether on a Saturday or Sunday morning or while during the week, working at home or in the office on a nice day, when you should be able to keep the windows open while taking a Zoom call or putting the baby down for a nap. This noise is also very harmful to professional operators up close, even when wearing hearing protection. And these operators tend to be low-income workers, very often immigrants, rarely organized as a labor force, particularly in the private sector, and therefore vulnerable in a variety of ways and very difficult to get to take a public stand. Their experience should not be ignored or forgotten just because they may not be directly represented before this body. But today, we'll hear from a group of panelists who will cover the health and environmental impacts. I've invited a representative of Sierra Club, who has done advocacy on this across the country, public health and environmental research professionals from Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland, and the owner of a Baltimore-based, women-owned landscaping business that uses no gas-powered equipment. Without going deeper into the details of toxic emissions that our guests will cover, I will note a couple of things for basic understanding. Small gas-powered devices like these that burn a combination of gasoline and oil are what is referred to as a 2-stroke engine. These do not combust their fuel as fully as automobiles and other more complex combustion engines, and it is the remaining matter that becomes pollution. While there are a range of 2-stroke engines, and places like California have moved to banning all of them, including commercial lawn mowing equipment, this bill addresses only the most easily replaceable category of device, leaf blowers. We could just as well do away with gas-powered string trimmers and personal lawn mowers, and I think that we should, but if we just address the unusually obnoxious devices that this bill addresses, I believe it will be a first step that is well worth taking. As drafted, the bill simply sets a cutoff for all use 1 year from the date of enactment. For context, Annapolis passed a ban in February, so just a few months ago of this year, February of this year, that takes effect this December an even faster turnaround time than this bill proposes. But I have always been flexible in the details of implementation and have had a number of conversations to where I believe I have amendment proposals that will address a number of concerns, the net of which is that I believe I have general principled support from the administration and a significant number of my colleagues here. I will address these amendments at an appropriate time in the hearing, but I just want to thank you all for taking the time to discuss the matter and consider it, and for allowing me to make these introductory remarks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey. We've also been joined by Councilman John Bullock of the 9th District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we are going to hear from our agencies, and then we're going to have a panel that will be speaking. Committee members, I'm just asking that you hold your questions until after we hear from both our agencies as well as the panel. After we hear from the panel, we're going to have public testimony as well. For members of the public online and also in person, you will have 3 minutes to provide your testimony. We're going to start with our...
Madam Chair, can I make remarks before we go to the agencies?
Sure.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tyler Shanella, City Council Liaison for Mayor Brandon Scott. On behalf of the administration, I want to extend my appreciation to Councilman Dorsey for introducing this legislation. The primary goal of both pieces of legislation is clear: to make the City of Baltimore greener and cleaner. City Council Bill 23-0367, as presently drafted, prohibits the use of gas-powered leaf blowers and leaf vacuums in the City of Baltimore, which would take effect 1 year after the legislation is enacted. The administration has concerns with this timeline and wants to ensure that city agencies, contractors, residents, and businesses alike are afforded the opportunity to make the necessary adjustments to comply with the new regulation. Given the significant impact this change will have on various stakeholders, it is crucial to provide ample time for everyone to transition smoothly. This includes allowing time for the procurement of new equipment, training for proper use and maintenance of electric alternatives, and the potential financial planning needs for these investments. Additionally, an extended timeline will facilitate a more comprehensive public awareness campaign to educate the community about the benefits of the transition and how to effectively adapt to the new requirements. Therefore, the administration has introduced amendments that would stagger enactment. Effective October 1, 2025, this ordinance takes effect for all city entities, contractors, and subcontractors. For all persons and individuals, which is city residents, the ordinance will take effect on October 1, 2027. This staggered approach will help to ensure a smoother transition and greater compliance, ultimately contributing to the successful implementation of this important initiative. And then, Madam Chair, do you want me to just stay on this one, or can I just make my brief remarks for the other bill as well?
No, you're going to pause there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Sinella. So we're going to go to the Department of Public Works.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Marcia Collins, representing the Department of Public Works. We are here for this bill and the next bill, and we have with us today Yvonne Moore Jackson, Megan Rissler, and Mr. Byrd, who are going to be here to help respond to any questions the committee may have. On this particular bill, 23-367, the prohibition, we provided a bill report, and we checked with all of our bureaus and divisions, and our inventory currently is at 62 of these gas-powered blowers. They are of differing strengths. Our water facilities division, because they are out in the reservoirs primarily, are using a more commercial backpack style, which is a more expensive item. And we've indicated on our charts in the report what it would take to shift to the battery-powered, which we are prepared to do. So today we are here in support and appreciate both the sponsor and the administration reaching accommodation about implementation timing. This would give us the opportunity to go through the purchasing process and replace all of our current gas-powered with battery-powered. And we would be happy to answer any questions once the committee is ready. Thank you.
Thank you. The Department of General Services.
Thanks, Tyler. John Riggin, Communications Manager and Legislative Liaison from the Department of General Services. Our use within our facilities maintenance division is at the moment about 3 leaf blowers that can easily be replaced. And our understanding is that the vendors that we work with are already in the process of moving to electric blowers and vacuums. So we would not oppose this. We would support this and work within the deadline that that Tyler, Mr. Schnella, had just proposed.
Okay, thank you. Did you guys have an official agency report that was submitted?
Hasn't been submitted yet, on its way.
Okay, Mr. Shanella, can you make sure that we get a report from DGS as well?
Yes, Madam Chair.
The City Solicitor's Office?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle Toth on behalf of the City Solicitor's Office. We approved the bill for form and legal sufficiency with one possibly minor amendment. Section 8403 is entitled Criminal Penalties, and the previous section actually discusses criminal penalties. 8403 only addresses civil penalties, so it's not, I don't know if the title just wasn't properly put in there, but it doesn't accurately reflect what's discussed in that section, 8403.
So with an amendment, you guys would be able to approve it for form and legal sufficiency?
Correct.
Okay. We're going to go to, thank you. We're going to go to our Environmental Control Board.
Madam Chair, the Environmental Control Board stands by their bill report.
Thank you. Our Health Department.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Julia Roche, Legislative Affairs Director for the Baltimore City Health Department, and I am accompanied by my colleague Jessica Speaker, Assistant Commissioner, Environmental Health. We have submitted an agency report, although I don't see it posted on Legistar. I can easily summarize though. It helps that our report is very similar to the one submitted by ECB. So health is in favor of this legislation. However, we are requesting an amendment, and it's the same amendment that ECB has requested. So as special enforcement officers, BCHD's environmental health specialists are authorized to issue environmental citations. However, BCHD does not issue civil citations. Individuals receiving an environmental citation may request a hearing before the Environmental Control Board, and environmental citations are limited to those violations enumerated in Article 1, Section 4014E7. So we recommend that that section be amended to include the violation proposed by this bill. And in addition to that, if it's desired that environmental citations be issued based upon this the report and photographic evidence of third parties, environmental citations would need to be added to Section 8403. And that all of what I just said is reflected in our report, which you should have shortly. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions. Oh, and importantly, we don't anticipate that our enforcement capability will be negatively impacted by this. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Recreation and Parks.
Madam Chair, the Department of Recreation and Parks stand by their bill report.
Department of Transportation.
The Department of Transportation stands by their bill report as well.
The Commission on Sustainability.
We did not receive the report from the Sustainability Commission in time for this hearing, Madam Chair, but I will ensure that in time for the next hearing that is on record.
Okay, so on the record, can we make sure going forward, we have a decent amount of hearings coming up in this. Can we make sure that we get the materials at least 48 hours before so the committee members can prepare? I just think that that's fair.
Yes, ma'am.
Instead of most of these reports coming in this
Yes.
morning. We're going to move on to Councilman Dorsey's panel at this time, and we're going to start with Marie Laporte of the Sierra Club. We're actually going to go with Dr. Russell Dickerson from the University of Maryland. He's going to be providing his portion of the panel virtually.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. My name is Russell Dickerson. I'm a professor in the Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Science at the University of Maryland, College Park, and a commissioner on the Governor's Climate Change Commission in the capacity as Science and Technology Liaison to that commission. I have a PhD in chemistry and have done substantial research on air pollution. So I can make it very quick. Leaf blowers powered by two-stroke engines are basically machines for turning gasoline and oil into air pollution. If you take a gallon of gas and it has a pound of carbon in it, a third of that carbon comes out as CO2, a third comes out as carbon monoxide, and a third as partially burned hydrocarbons. So this is 10 or 100 times worse than a typical automobile today. So it's not that internal combustion engines are necessarily bad for photochemical smog and air pollution. They're all bad, of course, for climate change, but two-stroke engines are particularly bad. So I would enthusiastically support the banning of any equipment other than extreme emergency equipment powered by two-stroke engines for the sake of the climate and the health of the citizens of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dickerson. We're going to go to our in-person panel, Marie Laporte, Sierra Club.
Good morning, Chair McCray and members of the committee. My name is Marie Laporte, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Greater Baltimore Group of the Sierra Club and our 12,000 members and supporters in support of Ordinance 23-0367. While many of you have likely experienced a noise blast of leaf blowers many times, you may not realize they're contributing to hearing damage for the operator and bystanders, including children who may be playing outdoors or trying to concentrate in a classroom. Gas leaf blowers frequently operate at 100 to 115 decibels, which is like a chainsaw at 3 feet away, while battery-operated blowers are far quieter and comparable to conversation. Gas blowers also have a sound wave pattern that enables them to penetrate into homes, so there's no escaping the noise. While this noise pollution is most damaging to the hearing of workers, it also causes stress-related illnesses, high blood pressure, speech interference, hearing loss, sleep disruption, loss of productivity for those even within earshot, which can be as far as 800 feet away. That's some distance. In addition to the audio assault, gas leaf blowers are outsized polluters, as Dr. Dickerson mentioned. Using a gas leaf blower for just 1 hour puts out as much smog-producing air pollution as driving a Camry 1,100 miles, or from Baltimore to Miami. In just 12 and a half hours, that device will put out as much air pollution as the average Maryland car driver does in 1 year. You almost couldn't design a more effective polluter. In a 2023 study, lawn and garden equipment was estimated to produce as much air pollution, gas lawn and garden equipment, in Maryland as 6.4 million cars. We only have 5 million light-duty cars and trucks in our state. Of lawn maintenance equipment, two-cycle gas devices like leaf blowers, trimmers, and small mowers produce 90% of the fine particulate pollution. While transitioning away from gas leaf blowers was more difficult years ago, electric and battery-operated alternatives are now comparable in power and cost in nearly every application. According to Consumer Reports, the best electric leaf blower models earned scores identical to the best gas models, and Wirecutter, an independent consumer product review platform, now recommends 5 corded and cordless leaf blowers and only 1 gasoline-powered model. Plug-in leaf blowers are available for as little as $30 for light-duty residential users and under $100 for top-rated models. Battery-operated are now comparable in cost and power to most gas models, more reliable, and less expensive to operate. Recharging costs just $2 a day and far lower than fuel costs, which can be $10 to $20 a day, depending on the fuel type and usage. Further, battery energy density, a measure of the power and duration of use, is rapidly improving every year. And while some commercial users may need 3 to 4 batteries to use a leaf blower all day in autumn, prices are dropping every year, and the savings in fuel can produce a positive return in just 1 to 2.5 years, even for commercial users. The batteries of these devices can also be interchanged with other equipment, are over 90% recyclable, and can be dropped off for recycling at your local hardware store. There's no recycling the used gas and oil, and no easy way to address all the air pollution that sickens so many of us. Change is never easy, and old habits die hard, but making the switch has never made more sense than now, and the urgency of addressing the climate crisis and our air quality cannot be delayed any longer. Our health, environment, and quality of life are too important. Thank you.
Thank you. Pete DiCarlo from Johns Hopkins.
Hello, my name is Peter DiCarlo, and I'm providing testimony today on Council Bill 230367, which bans the use of gas-powered debris removal equipment, leaf blowers. I'm providing these comments as a resident of Baltimore in my personal capacity, and I'm not representing the views or positions of Johns Hopkins University. I'm an associate professor of environmental health and engineering at Johns Hopkins in the Department of, in the area of my research is on air pollution with a focus on understanding the emissions and environmental health and impacts of these emissions. The proposed council bill will improve the environmental quality for residents of Baltimore by reducing air pollutant emissions, reducing noise related to debris removal, and have the added benefit of protecting worker health. Air pollutant emissions from gas-powered leaf blowers are extremely high. Two-stroke engines used in this equipment are inefficient combustion technologies and emit unhealthy levels of particulate matter, carbon monoxide, and volatile organic compounds, including benzene, a known carcinogen. These emissions originate from the unburned fuel and oil mixtures used for two-stroke engines and retain much of the chemical character of the mixture when being emitted, which essentially leads to direct emissions of gasoline and oil to the immediate area where the equipment is being used. From a health perspective, both the workers using the equipment and others nearby are impacted by the exposure to this particulate matter made up of the unburned fuel and oil and the volatile organic compounds as well. As benzene and butadiene are both contained in gasoline and are known carcinogens or cancer-causing agents, Reducing exposure will protect worker health. Electric-powered debris removal equipment, which can be used in place of gasoline-powered equipment, do not have these emissions and will therefore reduce air pollution and protect worker and nearby resident health. Thank you.
Thank you. And Amelia Cox with Monarch Mowing.
Good morning. I'm Amelia Cox. My company is Monarch Mowing, and I am currently the only, well, when I started the company, I was the only all-electric yard care business in Baltimore, and 3 years later, I still am. I started my all-electric yard care business because I saw a business opportunity, which has proven to be very successful. I receive the fees I ask, which I can assure you are higher than my competition. I have all the business I can handle, and I have wait lists in almost every neighborhood. I started my all-electric yard care business because I saw the civic opportunity. The noise and fumes of gas-powered yard care are optional. They harm workers and residents, and they erode our ability to enjoy our neighborhoods. And I started my all-electric yard care business because I saw a future impact opportunity, which is to say, I have kids, and I started my business so that those who are coming up behind us might sense that some of us, flawed as we are and blind as we have been, are attempting to live as if they are to come. This change to electric-powered gear is coming, as we have seen with legislation all over the country in different cities and states, and the future our descendants live in is priceless. I am in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Councilman Mark Conway. Thank you. We're going to move into committee questions at this time. I'm going to start with the sponsor of the bill. You have the floor, Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to request, can ECB or the Health Department request that their amendment be drafted, please? Tyler?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Can you have the ECB/Health Department amendment
Yes.
request?
Oh,
Can you
yes.
please have that drafted?
Yep, will do.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I don't have any other questions because I think that, you know, the bill stands on its strengths and on the testimony that we've heard from our agencies as well as our panelists. So I want to leave time for our colleagues here to ask any questions. Thank you.
Committee members, do you have any questions? Councilman Conway?
Yep. Forgive me for being a little bit late. Councilman, you and I had a conversation in advance. The one question I had was for considerations and how we phase in this so that we don't have folks having to not be able to use the equipment they currently have in their household. I wasn't here to cover if someone has already covered those questions, so if you could answer that, that'd be helpful.
Thank you. The administration has made a request and has sent us their proposed amendments for the timeline that I think are derived from our conversations that is similar to the conversation that you and I had. The proposal from the administration would allow for continued use for the city and commercial contractors operating in the city to be phased out by October 1, 2025. So that would take them through this current season. And then for the rest of the general public, as I noted in my remarks, you know, anybody who has bought a leaf blower in the last few years almost certainly bought an electric or battery operated one. 85% of what Home Depot sells is gas powered. So, you know, how many residential owners of gas ones there are is probably, you know, not particularly significant. So allowing for those people to get a little further use out of that equipment is reasonable. The administration's proposal is to allow up to October 1, 2027 for that. But I would add that one thing the administration and I discussed, and one thing that is not uncommon in bills like this, is to place constraints on the time of year that it can be used. You know, it can be enticing to use this equipment that, you know, people use for whatever its utility during leaf season. It can be enticing to then use it for other things and create the kind of nuisance and pollution that it creates throughout the whole year. And constraining that time during the transition period is not uncommon. And so what I would propose is that we limit usage of these devices to be between October 15 and December 15 during the transition period. The effect of that, though, would be that the administration's proposal would be to cut it off right before next year, right before next year's leaf blowing. So, look, well, I'm okay with this, but the October 2027 timeline that they're proposing is also, again, to cut it off right before next year. So I would say if we just cut it off at the end of December of 2026, it has the same effect if we're also limiting the time of year. So allowing the city to use them through this leaf blowing season and contractors use them through this leaf blowing season. I think it's worth noting too that, you know, residents who own these things and are using them at their home, they're just using them at their home. But contractors who are doing this work commercially are operating likely not just in Baltimore City, and not other, you know, not every surrounding jurisdiction in the state has already taken these measures. And so if we give this one-year timeline just for contractors as well, it means that they start transitioning into the equipment that they're gonna need in Baltimore City, but can still run out the life of their existing equipment while using it in those other jurisdictions in the over the next few years. When this equipment in commercial use only has a 2, 3, you know, if you really maintain it, maybe you get a 4th or 5th year out of it, but they'll be able to continue running that equipment out until other jurisdictions do this as well.
And would the intention for the city's gas-powered leaf blowers, or would we be looking to sell those, dispose of them, or otherwise have we thought much about?
There may be some resale market before it, but our agency is attested to the ability to meet this one-year timeline without opposition.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Within DPW's bill report, I think it's clear how much this would cost for that particular agency. Director Larson, overall, do we know the total cost across agencies to make this conversion? And I understand that some agencies are already making the conversion or have started a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't believe this bill was assigned to us for a response, so we did not look specifically at that question. I would be happy to take that as a follow-up and circle back with the committee. Madam Chair, I think you're on the, your thinking is in the right direction. Some agencies have already begun to plan for this transition. And so I would just want to follow up with agencies to understand what they've planned for in their existing budgets versus what is that remaining delta.
Would you be able to get that information to the committee by next Friday? Would that be enough time to compile how much this would impact agencies citywide?
Yes, I believe we can make that happen.
Okay, so I'll put that as a committee request. I just think it's prudent that we know the full cost of it.
For sure.
The other question, this is more so just forecasting the future. When we talk about this type of equipment for the equipment that say residence use, like I'm thinking about myself, my batteries are interchangeable. So whether it's my power tools, whether it's my hedger, whether it's my lawnmower, I can switch them out. Are our agencies going to be using, like, for commercial products? Because I'm pretty sure this is not the only thing that we're going to be going electric on. It's likely going to be our ride-along mowers that we may have. It's going to be other things. So are we going to be consistent in using one brand or something where we have interchangeable batteries? Are we thinking about that? Or are other agencies thinking about that?
Yeah, and I think that's more of a, conversation to have with procurement once you get into the actual like enactment and implementation of the ordinance, which is every agency is different. Not all agencies use the same equipment. And I think that they have the flexibility to be able to do that based on what's cost efficient for each agency. But it is certainly something that I can take back to the mayor and the executive team to ensure that that is top of mind as we look at this possibly being expanded to include the other tools that you mentioned, which aren't presently included in the legislation.
I would love that we think about this. The bill's been sitting there since December. So, and it's going to get passed soon with amendments. But I would love that we think about this stuff on the front end, even before the bill is passed. I think that it's important to start thinking about those portions, just knowing that it's coming soon. I'll stop there. I know Councilman Dorsey did not have any additional questions. Committee members, are you guys okay? So what we're going to do at this time is we're going to be having a future hearing on this. We need to work out the amendments and also an amendment that I am not showing right now from one of our agencies. But we will be scheduling this in the very near future so we can come back. And I apologize. We need to make sure that we do public testimony. Thank you so much, Councilman Dorsey. We're going to get to public testimony. And the first person in person that I have signed up is David Carter.
Good morning. Initially, when I came in, I was I'm a small business owner. I live, work, and buy a home in Baltimore. Initially, when I came in the meeting, I was totally against this. And one of my reasons is the time to implement this and the cost that it's going to cost me as a small business. I spoke with the councilman. He kind of explained the process of when it may be enacted, and then I heard the administration ask for a push of the date. And I'm encouraging this amendment to push the date back to help small businesses, because the electrical equipment right now is expensive because it's a new technology. It's a lot more expensive than the gas equipment. So giving us that time to transition, to be able to fund this legislation, because the cost is going to go back on a small business. The city is not going to give us any money. There's not going to be any supplements to help us. So I'm asking that, the amendment, even if the mayor can extend it out to the 2028 date, that would help us as small businesses to kind of transition. It's gonna happen, I see it's gonna happen. I operate a business, I wanna stay in business, but the cost that it's gonna fall back to me, because I will have to buy another, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I will have to buy another 5 blowers. Backpack blowers are expensive. And I have a leaf vac machine, and I heard him say leaf removal equipment. That machine cost me over 12 grand. It's a machine that sucks up leaves, and you put a leaf vac in there, I'm like, I won't be able to use that at all. So, those are a couple of concerns. I'm not totally against it, but I wanted to speak and at least lay these issues out there for the council and the committee to think about moving forward, about the small businesses that's gonna have to enact this. So, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Mr. Carter, thank you for your testimony. I want to get clarification. That leaf vac machine that you have, is that a bodily worn thing or carried? That's like a ridden thing?
Yeah, it hooks on the back of a truck, and it has a hose and it sucks leaves up.
So just to be clear, we didn't hear Rec and Parks testify to their report, but the amendment specifically that the Department of Rec and Parks requested of us is clarification on this issue of leaf vacuums, that they're specifically addressing your concern, so that when we're talking about banning leaf blowers and leaf vacuums, we're limiting it to those like portable, handheld, or bodily worn ones, not the like driven ones that are like driven around.
Okay, all right, but again, the more time we have to convert over will be helpful cost-wise. I'm trying to stay in business, but to eat that cost is a little stretch for me in the next year. So thank you.
Mr. Carter, thank you for sharing your testimony. We appreciate it. Nika Duckett Randolph. And for everyone testifying, I apologize, I did not provide specific instructions. When you come up, you're just going to push that red button, make sure that it's lit up, but you're also going to state your first and your last name for the record. And if you're with a company or organization, if you could share that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Greetings, Madam Chairwoman Danielle McCray and the rest of the Health, Environment, and Transportation Committee. My name is Nika Duckett Randolph. I am the Environmental Justice Director for Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, a community-led advocacy group with the mission to supplant structural racism and public transit policy with structural change to attain equitable, reliable transit, environmental, social, and economic justice for Charm City. I am here today to fervently urge the City Council members to support CB 23-0466 and expand current City Code to protect Baltimore residents from the negative effects of incinerating trash, particularly yard waste and recyclable materials.
I'm sorry, Ms. Nika, that's the next hearing. So we're on the yard residue. That's gonna be our next hearing.
Still today, but just not right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, on the sign-up sheet, I thought I was just signing in for all of the bills for today.
It is totally okay. We're going to get there.
Apologies.
No apologies needed. Robin Lopez Rosaria, if you're here for 23-0367 gas-powered debris removal testimony.
Refrigerated units that were put in landfills. I just have a question. You know, the Freon, the old fashioned up till 1996, refrigerated units that the gas that powered the freezer unit and the refrigerator.
Miss Holt? Yeah, would you like to testify?
I can't really testify because I don't have the degree or anything.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about it? Are you including the fact that this is an incinerating device that's already in landfills? And I was wondering how are you going to get it out of landfills? And the ones that are already built, buildings on it, you realize that the wrong thing, a fire could, in the level that is down in, can cause an explosion.
Okay, so ma'am, this is our testimony period. What I will make sure that we do is we're going to get your question and get your contact information, and someone's going to follow up so we can answer that for you. But this time it's just for testimony. Thank you. Before we move on to our virtual, just to check virtually to see if anyone would like to testify, I'm just going to do a last call to see if there is anyone else who was unable to sign up specifically to speak about 23-0367 gas-powered debris removal. If you would like to, you could come up to the podium at this time. Okay. Hearing and seeing none, we're going to move on to anyone virtually. We're going to check in to see if there's any testimony virtually that anyone would like to provide at this time. And if there are any folks who would like to testify virtually, if you could use the raise hand function. Mr. Richard Rice.
Yeah, hi there. My name is Richard Reese, and I live in the city of Baltimore in a condo apartment next to Canterbury Road. Gas-powered leaf blowers at our building and surrounding buildings are extremely loud and disruptive. They interrupt and draw my concentration and interrupt my conversations. But loudness can easily harm the men who use them and anyone nearby. Sometimes I walk through the Homewood campus at Johns Hopkins near me, and while the trees and the grass are beautiful, the sound of this type of equipment is not. They also emit harmful pollutants that cause and exacerbate disease. This is very close to home because my grandson has asthma. He's 10 years old, and he's even been hospitalized for it. Although he's a young, skilled athlete, I worry about his health. He carries a steroid inhaler for emergencies. Recent hot days and nights remind us that global warming is a real and increasing danger. Critical parts of Baltimore are vulnerable to sea level rise. Gas-powered blowers using two-cycle engines and burning a mixture of gasoline and oil emit more harmful pollution than full-size trucks. During a recent visit to my brother in Washington, D.C., I did see electric equipment for this purpose, both lawn mowers and also leaf blowers that were used to clear the grass. I also own a triplex in the city, and I use battery-powered equipment, the lawnmower and a string trimmer, and they work very well. And as far as the grass, they can easily be raked or swept. So I strongly endorse this bill. I think it's a great bill, and I think it's very timely. I hope the council passes it and the mayor agrees. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. And we're going to check to see if we have anyone else who would like to testify virtually. Okay, so we don't see any additional hands raised. I'm not showing anyone within the chat as well. So that's going to conclude our public testimony at this time. As stated earlier, we will be reconvening this hearing in the very near future. And at this time, this particular hearing is in recess. We're going to take a short 3-minute break before we move on to the next hearing. Thank you. The committee will now begin the second hearing of the day for Council Bill 23-0466, recyclable materials and yard waste disposal for the purpose of prohibiting the disposal of recyclable materials and yard waste in a landfill or an incinerator and providing for a special effective date. We're first going to hear from the sponsor of the bill, then we're going to hear from our agencies. Then we'll have our committee members who will put forth any questions that we may have, and then we're going to go into public testimony for this bill. Councilman Dorsey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The City Council has been talking about zero waste since before I was a member, and with little if any tangible progress to show for it. For as long as I've been in this role, I've asked DPW about what I believe is one of the most glaring opportunities to do better and one of the most egregiously wasteful practices in the whole city government, I think. And that also has not seen any change. Not only has not seen any change, but it seems to have actually moved in the wrong direction. Every year, DPW drives diesel trucks around the city. Trucks that produce harmful emissions in and of themselves and cost us taxpayers dollars to operate, only to collect bags of leaves people collect from their property, leaves that would be better left where they are to turn back into dirt and function as mulch for the plants they came from, where they play a vital role in a larger ecosystem in a world that is facing a soil crisis that threatens national and global food production. But what do? We spend our money to use our dirty diesel trucks to drive them to a place where we then spend more of our money to pay to burn them and turn them into life-threatening pollution rather than life-giving earth. In a city where as many people die prematurely each year because of preventable respiratory disease as die from opioid overdoses. This simply needs to stop, and not 5 years from now or in 2032. Not on some low and slow goal-setting timeline that's so typical of environmental regulations governments place upon themselves. This should just not be happening, period. And it wasn't what we always did. For many years, the city had a leaf collection site at Leakin Park, managed by Rec and Parks, but at some point, DPW started tossing bagged leaves into it, which created a problem that BCRP could not allow and had to discontinue the whole thing. I'm virtually certain that we could designate a place for leaves and that we could do this without real delay. But even if we can't or won't, there's nothing to say that we actually have to perform this collection in the first place. As the testimony of Amelia Cox in our last hearing said, the choice to pollute is a choice. We could just stop out of a principled understanding that if we don't have a responsible way to handle them, then we simply shouldn't. It's a choice to do harm by driving polluting trucks to collect these things that we better left in place, to take them to a place to burn them. It's crazy. Until very recently, DPW performed a separate collection of leaves that could very easily be taken to a designated site. Unfortunately, they changed their practice 1 or 2 years ago to simply mix leaf collection in with all other solid waste. And one result of this is that they have no account for even how much leaf waste they're hauling seasonally. When DPW came before this body last year with their 10-year solid waste management plan, continuing to espouse to support zero waste initiatives, they dare discuss the ability to direct waste away from the stream, measured in tonnage, but couldn't provide any sense of how much tonnage of leaf waste is collected and disposed of because it wasn't factored into the considerations of the solid waste master plan. This kind of operation without measured or measurable accountability is not really an acceptable way to spend taxpayer dollars. All the more so when, look, we are a city that espouses to care about equity. And what's just so crazy to me is that we collect these leaves, trading environmental harm that is done to all of us for the sake of a minor convenience provided to the people who have big yards. That's not an equitable trade, and I don't think that that's what the city of Baltimore should be engaging in if we don't, at the very least, if we don't have a responsible way to manage what it is that we're hauling in the first place. I even tried asking DPW to dump leaves just in different places in my district and going out there and opening the bags myself with volunteers in a desperate attempt to get the department to do anything else but to take them, to burn them. And I've been hitting on this since I took office 7.5 years ago and seen no forward progress. And the idea that we should have to wait the department's bill report asks for an implementation of 2032 is just absurd. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey. We're going to actually start with the administration. Mr. Schinella, at this time.
Madam Chair, you can just go directly to the agencies.
Will do. Commission on Sustainability.
Good morning, Madam Chair. It's the Office of Sustainability. I think there was some confusion between the commission and the office, but Ava Richardson, Sustainability Director for the office. We support the legislation as it aligns with specific waste reduction goals that we have in the 2019 Sustainability Plan, as well as the most recently updated 2024 Climate Action Plan. And it also aligns and supports the organics waste that residuals law that the state of Maryland implemented a couple of years ago and is in ongoing implementation. So we stand by our report.
Can you furnish the committee with your agency's report? We don't have it.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
City Solicitor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Elena DePietro from the City Solicitor's Office. The Law Department can approve the bill for legal sufficiency. We are in support of the amendment to extend the effective date and to be more consistent with the goals in the city's solid waste disposal management plan.
Thank you, Department of Public Works.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Marcia Collins, representing the Department of Public Works. And we have with us today some folks who can assist with any questions we may have. We have put in our report a series of examples of how we are trying to divert waste diversion. And we totally recognize that yard waste has consistently been taken to the incinerator or the landfill. Based on the expressions of the councilman's deep concern, we have been in the process of preparing for the placement of a first Baltimore City compost facility, which would provide us the opportunity to compost yard waste and other materials. We have in the works the plans for an East Side transfer station. And we received a $4 million grant, federal grant, for a scalable compost facility that we could locate at that site. And we are under design for the East Side transfer station as we speak. We would like to see, once that compost facility gets established, to double it in size. That would allow it for additional capacity so that we could direct our material in that direction. Right now, when residents want to dispose of yard waste, there are some, within the code, some requirements about the size of branching and the length and so on that has to be bundled, but in general, leaves, seasonal material can be bagged separately and collected, but they are collected on the normal trash days, which means while we are allowing them from a volume perspective to put this material out, it does not result in their separation from the mixed waste collection. As part of our plans going forward to begin to divert as much waste as possible from the waste stream, the Office of Waste Diversion has been working on a plan to divert waste that is issued from yards, the organics material that the councilman is referencing. And right now, in a draft process, we feel that a phased approach would help not only wean us off of that type of collection process, but would also get us to a steady state. And the first phase that we're considering would be using a Monday collection day for yard waste. It would be on a day in which we are not performing normal collection of trash or recyclables. By doing so, we could utilize our existing vehicles. Granted, they are diesel. That would allow us to incorporate a collection process that could be requested via 311. We feel that a Monday, most people are doing a lot of yard work on the weekends or may collect throughout the week, so a Monday would be a good day, and it would also allow us to not have to reach out and create a new collection process with crews and equipment. So that would be the easiest first phase, but it also would take a rollout for, attuning our residents to call 311. Additionally, that phase, we would also look at providing a roll-off location at Sisson Street to provide people the opportunity, if during the week they are doing materials and they want to drop it off, they don't want to wait till Monday, then they could utilize that drop-off location, and we were looking at that possibility as well. We believe we would probably have to put a size limitation, like 10 bags, up to 10 bags per collection point, so that we wouldn't overwhelm the trucks and constantly have the folks going back and forth. We would want to make sure that we could meet all of our 311 ticket requests and a typical collection on a Monday. In the meantime, what will be happening is the advancement of the East Side Transfer Station and the composting facility itself. Again, it's a scalable facility. It would be able to handle approximately 12,000 tons per year at that size, and we could double it in as we expand that facility. We would also be looking to, we are also looking under this phase 2 process, what other materials can we now also remove that could be compostable. Yard waste compost facilities are pretty straightforward, but adding food waste and other materials can add complexity to the process and sometimes require additional equipment in vessel systems to make sure that you are doing it appropriately and that you're continuing to get a consistent and good product. And then on phase 3, we would be looking at all of the data, the success of this process, and whether how we would consider expanding either additional composting facilities throughout the city, look at the potential for a regional facility, if that makes sense, looking at routine collection, curbside collection of food waste, for example. How you could do that? Would a fee be necessary? How you could do it equitably? And so that would be a lot of the phase 3 discussions that we would be having. So this is just a rough layout of what we're looking at to isolate, starting with yard waste, and also to look at other opportunities. The need for a phased process for us is to make sure several things. 1, do we have the capacity? 2, do we have the equipment and people? And 3, have we prepared the residents for this transition? I would be happy to answer any questions the committee may have once you're ready to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Department of General Services.
Good morning again. John Riggin, representing DGS. We support the amendment and the bill, and we support DPW's phased approach, and we're able to support that. There will be a bill report coming in shortly reflecting that. Apologize for the oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Finance.
Good morning, everyone. Laura Larson, Budget Director representing the Department of Finance. We submitted a response to the bill in opposition to the proposal. Do just want to note that we are supportive of the policy goal and want to be supportive partners in working to transition the city to a zero waste model. But I think as we do that, we have to look at how we can either make proposals be cost neutral through realizing savings in other areas and or through generating revenue that can offset the costs of where new service provisions represent a new cost.
Thank you. We're going to go into questions. For the first question, and this is for DPW, I know it's stating that right now the yard waste is collected with mixed refuge. Do we have any type of estimate of how much yard waste is being disposed of?
I'm sorry. In our report, we mentioned that we see about 36,000 tons of residential yard waste per year. The $4 million compost facility that we have funded so far can handle about 12,000 tons per year. And additional $4 million investment in that facility would get us to 24,000. And so these tonnages, the 36,000 tonnages figure is based on 4 waste sorts that we conducted under the Less Waste, Better Baltimore in 2019. We're getting ready to do another waste sort imminently, and that tells us statistically what we can see in our mixed refuse, whether it's recyclables, food waste, paper, yard materials.
I have one quick question. When did you all start developing the organics diversion plan that you're talking about with these phases?
I believe Megan is here, Megan Ressler is here with us, who can speak more to this, but I believe it was in 2023 when we were starting to work and roughing out this plan.
Megan Ressler. I'm a program analyst for the Office of Waste Diversion. We started putting this diversion plan together in May of 2023. Since then, we wrote and received the EPA Solid Waste Infrastructure Grant to build a compost facility. So with that support, some of this plan can be shifted because we have the funding for a compost facility, which aligns with this plan, but will shift certain things in it.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey.
Thanks. I want to be clear. We have a $4 million grant to essentially get us started in preparing to create a facility, but even the report says that we needed another $16 million to actually be able to build it, right? $4 million doesn't get us to being able to compost anything.
No, sir. I'm sorry for the confusion. The 16 million is specifically for the entire east side transfer station development. The compost facility will be located at that site, but that $4 million grant was separate from the 16 million for the east side transfer station development. So we will have a $4 million compost facility all ready to go.
By when?
I'm not sure of what that time will be, but right now we have the location at Bowleys Lane. Bowleys Lane will be the east side transfer station development, which is already under design.
So I think the people behind you had something to say about it.
Hey, good morning, esteemed members of the council. My name's Antoine Bird. I'm the Chief of Disposal Services for the, I'm sorry. My name's Antoine Bird. I'm the Chief of Disposal Services for the Department of Public Works and responsible for the Eastside Transfer Station project. Currently, we are working with a vendor to design the Eastside Transfer Station, which includes the compost facility. The design on that is expected to be completed somewhere around the second or third quarter of 2025. Construction will begin shortly after the procurement period, but right now we're expecting that to be somewhere towards the end of 2026, 2027.
And also, Councilman, the completion and construction of this facility is a priority for the mayor and has been since he took office. Additionally, I do want to highlight that receiving $4 million from the federal government is a huge accomplishment towards this project. We also, MOGR worked last session to ask for additional dollars from the state for this. That was not included in the budget, and we will likely be going back this session to ask for those dollars again.
So let me see if I make sure I understand these numbers, because I've seen this number 12,000 tons per year before. That's the full capacity that we ever anticipate Bowleys Lane being able to handle.
No, sir. The compost facility that we received $4 million to construct is a scalable facility. So if we are able to get an additional 4 million, for every 4 million of that type of facility, you get 12,000.
Up to how, and up to what max? If we got,
The max is 24,000 for this facility and this area in Eastside Transfer Station.
okay. And the estimate here is that we produce $36,000 of just yard waste. Say 36,000 tons. What did I say? I don't know what I said. Yeah.
Yes, based on waste sorts that we did in 2019. Okay, did you want to ask?
I'm just looking at the faces behind you.
So the waste sorts are the full amount that is in our entire waste stream. Usually we expect a percentage of that waste to be diverted in the same way that if we do a waste sort to see how much recyclable materials are in our waste stream, not all of those recyclable materials, unfortunately, are thrown in our blue bins. Some of them still do make it to our mixed refuse. So although we would love to divert every single thing that is recyclable or composted, it is not realistic in the first and second year that we will divert all 36,000 tons. We would like to increase our compost processing facility while we increase our marketing and communications to encourage yard waste diversion as we build this program.
So then I want to be clear. We don't actually have a number on the tonnage, and this was the case when we heard the solid waste management plan. We have no number for what we collect in terms of seasonal leaf collection alone.
That's correct. We have data on the number of pickups, but we do not have data on the actual tonnage because it is mixed with our mixed refuse.
All right, so I'm glad that we're clear about that. So at best, the thing that we have in the works for 2026, 7, maybe 27, is perhaps more realistic, optimistic. It's insufficient still to handle what we're collecting and currently disposing of in what I would characterize as like an environmentally irresponsible manner. And so our idea is that we're going to keep collecting it in this environmentally irresponsible manner while still having no plan for ever how to become environmentally responsible. We still don't have the funding or a plan to, we're at best going to get to like a third of it, maybe a fourth of it, maybe. Gabe is here. I was going to ask Laura, but since finance is here, and Laura specifically, in the report, finance specifically analyzed certain costs. I think it's only fair then to analyze certain savings, right? I think we should know how much money we spend specifically handling seasonal yard waste and the collections that we do for that. And I think that we can't do that if we mix it in with other waste, right? It's got to be separate. And I saw this, I appreciate this 3-phase plan proposing the idea of moving to an entirely 3-1-1 based collection system. I think if we do that and we're able to measure tonnage, that's good. But I guess I would assume that we have some capacity to put numbers at this point on how much we would save. I mean, look, ostensibly by just like not doing seasonal yard waste collection, not doing like Christmas tree collection, like we don't have to do this. Again, it's something that we opt to do. I'd like to know what it costs for us to do this stuff so that we can have a fair understanding of potential savings. Okay.
Gabriel Stewart Zykowitz for the finance department. We would be able to analyze that if we had a idea. We know how much per ton is the incinerator charges for us, so we would be able to do a fairly straightforward analysis about how much it would cost. For savings.
Great, thank you. And I don't have any other questions. I will just say, I think for perspective and context, the proposal to delay on stopping incinerating this stuff means that we will have a new key bridge before we have the ability to stop incinerating leaves. That's crazy. Like, that's awful to have to say. That's awful to have to think. Like, we have the ability to just not pollute on an annual basis, and I'm sure that we can figure this out a lot sooner.
Yeah, Councilman, but it's a lot more nuanced than that. And I think that, again, what you heard from DPW is that there is a plan to be able to get the data that you're asking for. Right now, that's not the case because it's not being collected separately. Marsha just went over a 3-phase plan, and the amendment that the administration put in is in alignment with the termination of the Bresco contract. And similarly in alignment with, at some point in between prior to that, the completion of the Eastside transfer station. As Marsha mentioned, and others from DPW, the transfer station is scalable. And we know that we will require more than one composting facility. I think you just heard that the maximum capacity is what, 24,000 tons. If we're estimating 36,000 at the moment, and other residents catch on and want to participate, then we will need to increase our capacity and ability to collect the yard waste to meet the demand. And that means that we need to be able to prepare properly because efficiency is important, and making sure that we can collect this yard waste in a manner that works for the city and is convenient for city residents is important. And that requires time. So I hear you on that. We've been in constant communication, and we will continue to be in constant communication to work through this. But that is where we are at the moment.
Thank you. Let me just be real clear on my perspective here. It's entirely optional that we collect seasonal yard waste at all. That's entirely optional. And in my mind, the only reason we should be collecting it is because we need it in order to have the browns necessary to match with the greens in a composting facility that we don't have. To me, it's entirely reasonable that we would just not collect this stuff until we have this responsible way, and then only collect it to the extent that we can responsibly dispose of it. It's entirely a choice to collect this stuff and to produce the cost that comes with its collection and the environmental problems that come from its collection. That's a choice we make and don't have to.
Yeah, and it goes both ways because there are challenges if you don't. You clog storm drains, you damage the street sweeping equipment that goes down to clean it up. There are a lot of implications here, and again, it's not straightforward, and it's a lot more nuanced than I think is being led on.
And if I could just add one point to that, certainly want to appreciate all the logistic challenges that DPW has spoken to. When it comes to meeting the capacity needs, some of that will be met by the private sector, by the public sector as the city, but a lot of that may also come from the private sector. So I want us to keep that in mind. There are new composting facilities that will likely come on board with the passage and implementation of HB 264, the Organics Waste Residual Diversion Law for the state. So while the capacity for what the city can potentially manage with the proposed facility may be minimal, I think managing up to a quarter of residential organic waste, there's a lot of other opportunities in the private sector that we're going to see coming out. I know that doesn't address your specific kind of value statement, but I did want to make sure we kept that in mind.
This is likely for the Office of Sustainability and DPW, maybe Finance. I want to know, what are other municipalities doing to make similar plans, proposals like this cost neutral? Like, how are they accomplishing it? Because I know it's a ton out there, and some have been doing it, collecting this for a while. But what are they doing to make this cost neutral?
And Madam Chair, can we follow up with that information so that way it can be comprehensive?
I'm happy, and so I can start and then pass it to Megan from DPW.
Thank you.
Just to provide a little bit of context. There are a couple of municipalities across the state that have their own composting facilities. Howard County is one that comes to mind, where they're managing roughly maybe half of their residential waste through a composting with their compost facility right now. We do have several pending federal funding proposals that would actually seek to build out that capacity across the region, not just within Baltimore City, because we are land limited when we think about the actual land that we have to develop for the purpose of organics waste diversion. So we do want to partner with our neighbors and other jurisdictions to figure out how we meet those capacity goals. We have pending federal funding proposals for that. In terms of some of the other surrounding jurisdictions from Anne Arundel County, I can't, or even Baltimore County, I cannot recall specifically, but I think they're encountering a lot of the same challenges when it comes to spotting facilities that locating the space, I should say, that really meets the requirements to build a compost facility and encountering the logistics around it, because there's so much change that has to come in education and engagement when it comes to the behavior change of us as residents or citizens in terms of actually acclimating to organic waste diversion activities in new collection protocols. So other surrounding counties are in many ways in the same situation that we are with trying to figure a lot of these details out. With there are some examples of, again, as I mentioned, the folks that are like a little further ahead in Howard County.
I'll second that. I think that they have a lot of the same challenges that we do, and in speaking to many of these counties, they have not been able to make the collection of yard waste cost neutral. I know that Anne Arundel County has to, they have several hauling contracts for their yard waste, and it's hauled to PG County.
Madam Chair, the other factor to remember is that some other counties utilize a solid waste enterprise fund in order to pay for the hauling of waste through a fee rather than through property taxes like Baltimore City does.
I feel like in one of these reports that was something that was proposed, is it not?
What was that, ma'am?
I said, I feel, if I recall in one of these reports, it was something that was proposed.
That could be.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that could be, if a fee is used, but a fee in Maryland is very specific, but if a fee is used to pick up that would be one way of offsetting the cost of picking up the yard waste.
And some of those fees, these enterprise funds, they may be called Save As You Throw or Pay As You Throw, and can be rather controversial in terms of implementation. I'll defer to my DPW colleagues to speak in more detail to that, but it has been talked about for a while, but there are a lot of complexities and challenges with actually implementing that type of enterprise fund, especially depending on how it's structured.
I agree. I think Baltimore residents should get quality services, make sure we're taking care of something else before we just throw in another fee. I just wanted to know. When is this draft plan, a final plan, when is this going to, when are you guys going to finalize this? Or is it a timeline to finalize this draft plan from May 2023?
And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the facility will come online in 2028, all things kind of progressing as intended, but I don't want to misspeak, though.
Because we already have the base of the plan, I think that we can put something together in 3 weeks.
Madam Chair. So I heard several things, but your first request was about how you get to cost neutral, correct? In addition to the finalizing of a phase plan. Was that correct? You wanted to get an analysis of what could be a cost neutral service? Is that what I heard?
I would like to see how this could become cost neutral. If you guys have ideas, if you can just make sure that the committee has them. I know one option you guys said, hey, is a fee-based plan, but what else can you do? I know that there are other municipalities outside of this state that are also doing this work. So we only spoke about counties here, but we didn't even talk about what's happening outside of the state. So I mean, that's something I would like to see as part of a plan like this. The second part of it was you've been working on this draft plan since May 2023. I was looking to just see when we would have a final plan. If you guys had an idea when we would have a final plan. I'm not saying, hey, give us a final plan in 3 weeks. No. That's not what I'm saying. But I just wanted to see if you guys had an idea when this would be finalized. That was it.
Okay.
And I'm assuming we don't have an idea right now.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we don't, no, because then such plan would need to be approved by the city administrator, the mayor's executive team. So at this moment, we won't communicate an exact timeline on that plan.
Thank you. Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to follow up on the line of question you were asking specifically around cost neutral considerations. And I'm curious for finance, when we're thinking about the expenses here, are we also thinking about the long-term impacts of expansion of our landfill? That costs us hundreds of millions of dollars every time we have to do that. And we just did it less than a decade ago, and it's looking like we're going to burn through that landfill faster than expected. So forgive me, let me move this. Let me not break it. But the question here is, when we're thinking about expenses here, do we bake in those long-term expenses, 10-year, 20-year plus expenses, and the cost of not figuring this out?
That was not a part of our response.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's really important, because I think you guys are looking at the, year in, year out expenses, which is 100% right. But the city takes a hit no matter what every 10 to 15 years when we have to expand our landfill. And so I think if we could think about those considerations as well and factor in as much as possible what that might mean, I think it'll be helpful in our analysis, and especially our investment, whatever investment that may be in composting and yard waste diversion, so that that's not going into a landfill effectively. And Madam Chair, I have my own questions, if that's okay. Sure. So I was going through the report. I noticed as well the timeline piece. We don't have any dates here, and I think this is something we've been working on for quite a while. My worry about not having dates here, and while I know we're not going to have that in 3 weeks or today, I totally understand, is that these all sound great. These sound like great ideas. I'm happy we're thinking about these things, but without a sense of when we expect to implement them and the overall comprehensive look, it's really hard to look at one issue at a time. For instance, we're looking at yard waste right now, but we absolutely want to consider food waste diversion as well. And there are efficiencies in scale, and there are efficiencies because these things can actually end up being composted together if we're smart about it. So as we think about this complete plan, I appreciate the thought put in here. I would love to see, a 5-year plan, something that we can kind of think about and begin working on today, so that as we as a council are thinking about these issues, we're not, helter-skelter throwing out policies out there that are great and make sense, but would be really helpful in a bigger plan and a bigger consideration. Just an ask to the administration and the agency.
Thank you, Councilman. It's noted.
Yeah. The other consideration in thinking about that plan as well, we talked about some of our regional partners, the other surrounding counties. I think there is a real opportunity for us. I mean, right now, let's be real, we are handling their trash. We're burning it. The incinerator is handling a significant amount of waste from the surrounding counties. So right now, it's all coming here, or a significant portion of it. So when we're thinking about our waste diversion practices, I'm totally fine with that waste continuing to come here from surrounding counties as long as we can benefit from it. I mean, I'm sure they would be willing to pay us if we would be taking that trash. That consideration might help us with some of the expenses and costs of the capital and the expenses that go into building these systems. So just a thought there, and I'm not sure if finance has considered that as well. Maybe you have.
We would have to understand how much we would collect and what our capacity is. We don't obviously want to go over. The whole reason for the phased approach is so that we don't go over capacity in any given year. And so I would be, finance would be a little cautious as to estimating how much we could bring in when we would need to know more information about capacity in general.
Sure. My thought here is simple, because Prince George's County is already doing this. Right now, our surrounding counties are sending their waste to Prince George's County. They're traveling an hour south to do that. What we need in the Baltimore region is a regional waste diversion facility, much like Prince George's has, so that they don't have to travel an hour to do that. We can be that, or we can work with one of our surrounding counties for them to be that. And I think that is a conversation that we, for the administration, we should be working with Baltimore County, Howard County, and Arundel County to figure out what makes sense. If we don't have the land here, we should be working with them. If we do have the land here and we have the infrastructure to make it happen, maybe it should be us. But when we think about the expenses, we should be thinking about that. And then last piece, those are 2 points I was making. Just a question here, and I always thought I knew the answer to this question. This bill covers yard waste and recyclables. When we put our recyclables in a blue can, I've always assumed that is always recycled. Is there a case in which it is not?
Yes, all of the materials that we collect in the blue bins go to a vendor, and that vendor sorts and bundles based on, how it would be repurposed or reutilized. There was always even though we do a lot of messaging about recycling, inevitably you're going to see some contamination, and that contaminated material has to be set aside in order to keep the materials that are recyclable and repurposable in a condition that are saleable. I believe the last time we checked, our contamination rate was just under 16%, which is happens to be pretty good, and I think the best in the region right now. And my personal feeling is that those blue bins got rid of one of the sources of contamination that was constant, which was plastic bags containing recyclables, and people didn't want them blowing all over the block. So the fact that you can put them in loose into that container helps cut back on a lot of contamination that could otherwise divert that material elsewhere.
No, that's great to know. So long story short, when we have contamination, that is the only instance in which we'll see recyclables end up in the general waste stream.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I think that's all I got. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Councilman Bullock, did you have any questions? Okay. We're going, no, okay. We are going to move into public testimony at this time. For members of the public, I'm going to call the names of everyone that we have listed. When you get to the mic, if you could just restate your first and last name, if you're with an organization or a business, if you could also state that. For those in attendance virtually, we're going to move to you after we finish with the folks that are in the chambers. And we're just asking that if you would like to testify virtually, that you raise your hand at this time, that you use the raise hand function so we know. We're going to start with Michelle Rockwell.
Right. Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, Chair McCray and members of City Council. My name is Michelle Rockwell. I'm a 20-year Baltimore City resident, and I'm testifying in support of Bill 466. I stand here as a human being who takes seriously the climate crisis we are facing. Based on the Less Waste, Better Baltimore plan, we are currently not on track, though. Presently, only 2% of residential organic waste and 45% of commercial organic waste is composted, and the city has only budgeted to increase our composting capacity to 15% of what the Less Waste, Better Baltimore plan calls for by 2030. I also stand here as an agitated Baltimore resident and taxpayer with regard to the city's ongoing willingness to support the operation of the Bresco incinerator. Studies have shown that neighborhoods living near the incinerator have chronic health impacts, which significantly impact people's quality of life and overall life expectancy. Despite these facts, the city continues to pay Bresco for burning our trash. This year, the city will pay Bresco over $2 million in tipping fees just for yard waste. By implementing this bill with the current effective date, we'd save over $15 million over the remaining 7 years of the Bresco contract just in tipping fees alone. I urge the City Council to do what's right for our planet, for the health of our residents, and for our overall fiscal health. Please pass this bill in order to get us on track with the Less Waste, Better Baltimore plan so that we can do our part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, have healthier neighborhoods, and not waste money. Thank you.
Thank you. Toby Harris.
Thank you. Good morning, Council Chair and members of the City Council. So my name is Toby Harris. I'm one of the Environmental Justice Coordinators for the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, and I'm a 10-year resident of the city as well. So I'm going to repeat some of those facts that Michelle shared. So again, with only 2% of the residential organic waste stream getting composted and just 45% of the commercial organic waste stream being composted, again, we're here today to help kind of echo the calls of our young frontline residents who've long been pointing to and calling for the removal of recyclables and organics from our waste stream, again, unjustly harming human environmental health as we're currently burning and burying these materials across South Baltimore. As we noted, many other jurisdictions in Maryland already compost their yard waste and offer curbside yard waste collection. So it's kind of beyond time that we follow suit and offer these services so we can, stop burning these materials in our already overburdened communities. So again, we've been discussing, and we'll hear more about the fact that the city nonetheless is not on target, and we're clearly not following the recommendations of the Less Waste, Better Baltimore plan. So again, the council kind of needs to be focused and setting a deadline for implementation while also incorporating the necessary capital budgets as well. So again, this year alone, the city is going to pay $2 million in tipping fees just for yard waste. If we actually implemented the council bill, we'd save over $15 million over the next 7 years just in those tipping fees alone. So again, please take the already recommended steps and pass the bill 466. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Nika Duckett Randolph.
Greetings, Madam Chairwoman Danielle McCray and the rest of the Health, Environment, and Technology Committee. My name is Nika Duckett Randolph, and I'm the Environmental Justice Director with Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, a community-led advocacy group with the mission to supplant structural racism in public transit policy with structural change to attain equitable, reliable transit, environmental, social, and economic justice for Charm City. I am here today to fervently urge the City Council members to support CB 23-0466 and expand current city code to protect Baltimore residents from the negative effects of incinerating trash, particularly yard waste and recyclable materials. It is imperative City Council supports this bill and provides Baltimoreans with proper policy protections to ensure the city and the state are on target to meet goals established in several corrective environmental policies like Climate Solutions Now, Less Waste, Better Baltimore, and the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. As Environmental Justice Director at BTEC, my work is heavily focused on collecting, analyzing, synthesizing, and reporting data regarding multiple environmental justice concerns. A big chunk of that has been emission reduction work, tracking where they come from, their health impacts, who's being impacted, how many at what scale we should be removing to meet deadlines, etc. The transportation sector is responsible for roughly 25% of greenhouse gas emissions in the region, and by investing strategically and creatively in transportation infrastructure, those emissions can be lessened. Clean Water is advocating for similar emission reduction work in the sanitation sector, which is responsible for about 3% of greenhouse gas emissions. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions significantly improves air quality, public health, and in turn public safety, and stops climate change. Passing this bill is a crucial step in developing the sanitation infrastructure needed to meet the moment. Without it, progress simply is not being made. The current burning of yard waste and recyclable materials touches many other policy areas. Our world is a lot more interconnected than we care to acknowledge, and I would be remiss to not highlight those intersectionalities here. We see them in the air quality advisories we receive, the asthma rates of our babies, and the heat advisories we've had just last week. Multiple studies have shown the correlation between poor public health and decreased public safety. There is a clear workforce development opportunity in supporting CB 23-0466, which in turn is a positive for Baltimore's overall economy. A UN report concluded that circular economic models can produce full net gains over $108 billion, while traditional waste management and reduction models at best cap spending at $270 billion annually by 2050. It is also not lost on me that so many of these intersections are compounding inequities for some of Baltimore's most vulnerable populations. The infamous black butterfly, Lawrence T. Brown so brilliantly articulated, consistently shows up time and time again in new maps that highlight the same places and people are continuously overburdened and underserved. We need a complete systemic redo. We are still suffering the consequences and ongoing historical trauma from government and private sector collaboration decades old. No one can argue the Black Butterfly is the direct result of racist government and private sector collaboration across multiple departments and industries. I think we can all agree it would only be fair for those same agents who created this seemingly permanent problem to be responsible for fixing it. I urge the City Council members to meet the moment and take a stand for Baltimoreans by passing and supporting this bill. Do not kick the can and leave the problem for others to solve, as your predecessors have left to you. And the moment is prime for this committee to meet it. There is unprecedented support at the federal level for green initiatives and resources, especially for greenhouse gas emission reduction. The EPA has over $27 billion in grants, and the Inflation Reduction Act also has a myriad of resources and funds available specifically for waste diversion, as well as subsidizing a green economy transition. There is a huge opportunity to do something that could change Baltimore City for the better forever right now. The Department of Public Works themselves have outlined both a need and a plan for the city to adopt zero waste policies. It is also very clear that they are not on track to meet those goals. The Department of Public Works needs to be set up for success and guided with policy. We need both good policy and implementation for our goals to be reached. So I urge the council to think about how the policy could possibly be implemented as well. Thank you for your time, and please don't kick the can. Meet the moment.
Thank you for your thoughtful testimony. I didn't state that we had 3 minutes for folks who are testifying, and that is the reason why I let Ms. Nika go ahead. So that means that the folks who are going to follow are going to have up to 5 minutes if they need it to testify. I just want to be fair. Deborah Kleinman.
Hello there. My name's Deborah Kleinman, and I'm the chair of the Greater Baltimore Group of the Sierra Club. Some people know me as Spice. And I want to thank you all for letting me speak today. And we strongly support this ordinance, CB 230466, recyclable materials and yard waste disposal. This bill's a necessary and positive step forward to improve air quality and the health of residents, as well as reduce greenhouse gas emissions. When organic materials, including yard waste, are dumped in landfills, they decompose and create methane gas, which is a pollutant and very potent greenhouse gas, which is contributing to our climate crisis. When organic materials, including yard waste, are incinerated, they release carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, and other pollutants into the environment. And I believe we all know this. When organic materials include yard waste are properly composted, they will not release any gases or pollutants and will actually sequester carbon into fresh, healthy soil, which I use in my backyard all the time. This ordinance is a great step towards a cleaner and healthier Baltimore, and we urge your support of the ordinance. And I love what you said, Mark, about thinking about how much it would cost to make the landfill bigger, and also all the public health costs that burning all this organic matter create. So we think that it's a wonderful bill, and we support it. And I thank you all for all your hard work.
Thank you. Ms. Robin Lopez, did you want to testify? Yeah. Okay.
I agree with ending the incineration because of the pollution that it is causing, because the production of the implementation of the incineration isn't being done properly.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lopez, to cut you off. Can you just state your first and last name just for the record?
Robin Lopez.
Thank you.
And I'm a Maria. There's like 25 Robin Lopez's in Baltimore City alone now. Okay, so I don't know if anybody has ever been to an incineration plant and seen the waste left over. You cannot melt certain things to a certain degree. The metals have to be melted by a certain degree. The incineration plants that you have here, because the gases are being done, shows that most of the metals are not being melted at the degrees of the temperature that they're created. Okay, so one of your problems is going to be, you're talking about composting and stuff. There's the lack of education in the schools and in the private sector, in the home of adults already elderly and middle-aged adults. There's different groups that need to be educated on recycling and reusable, and taking things and making them a new product from the old, like the arts and craft thing, or like taking a bunk bed ladder and making a planter from it. And if it got burnt in a fire, scraping the ash product off of that, bringing it down to the carbon part, bringing it down to the wood part, and recycling those individual things and different things. What you're gonna, with your recycling projects, on your recycling, you're not gonna work together because you have different days in different sectors of the city. You don't have a one day for all the city to recycle the same product on the same day. And then also Baltimore County people that have recycling and landfill areas out that cross Baltimore City and have to pay for their when they strip or deconstruct a house and they say they're going to put it in these areas. Baltimore City is surrounded by Baltimore County. Baltimore County dumps in Baltimore City, okay? A lot of people dump in Baltimore City. Baltimore County does that a lot. Other counties do it a lot. People close to, like Anne Arundel and Essex, those people, Baltimore County, for example, Randallstown section, they bring their mattresses. They have what I call daylighters, people that pick up things, the companies that are junk for hire companies that you have now. They're picking up stuff from county people, and they're saying they're going to put it in the county thing, charge them for that cost of they're putting in there. What they're doing is dumping it in your city areas. And and 3/4 of the people in the general media outside of Baltimore City are blaming Baltimore City residents for the trash, when at least half of it is coming from Baltimore County and the surrounding counties, because they don't want to pay the price to take it to the landfill areas and the dump sites that are around in the section of Baltimore counties that have to cross over Baltimore City. So you're gonna need at least 15 types to 21 types of recycling bin things. So you'd have to do five days of at least 4 days, four products or things to be recycled. And also one thing that you don't recycle or think about recycling is children's toys. Is one of the products that is mass, and then also the fecal matter of the animals that people have and the cat litter and things like that that go into your, that need to have a separate recycling, because the cat litter, for example, and the cat manure, I'll call it, can be used as a compost or as a fertilizing agent and the things like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who's here right now in person, who was unable to sign up to testify but would like to testify? Okay, we're going to move on to virtual testimony. For our folks who are here virtually, we have a few people who are going to testify. Please make sure that you use the raise hand function so we can identify you to speak. We're going to start with Andrew Hines.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I just have to quickly say to the mayor's office, and the mayor and the mayor's representative, in this particular instance that we're talking about, yard waste incineration, nuance equals bull manure. That was so much delay and fear and uncertainty and distrust from the mayor's office. It was shameful. So 800 premature deaths are what we have from the wind waste operated Bresco incinerator. That is not revenue neutral for the people involved. It's not revenue neutral for any of us. People going to the hospital room for asthma and missing school is not revenue neutral. I fully support this bill. I fully support this statement. I'm sorry, my name is Andrew Hins. I live in 1427 Park Avenue, 11-year city resident, lifelong Maryland resident. I apologize for not saying that. I fully support this bill. I fully support Councilman Dorsey's statements about the bill. I completely oppose any testimony by the mayor's office or DPW on this. They cannot be trusted. Past experience shows us this. So as I said, 800 deaths per year is not revenue neutral. All the external costs mentioned about doing this when there are alternatives are not revenue neutral. I'm going to add quickly that I am a resident of the Midtown Benefits District based on where I live. And where we live, we can put our yard waste in a paper bag, take it and put it next to a trash can on the city street in our neighborhood, and the Midtown Benefits people will pick it up and take it somewhere where it's not incinerated. Problem solved. We didn't have to increase any Midtown Benefits fees that I know of for this service, but yet the service is being done. So it is being done now. So the problem we have with this wind waste incinerator is that in 2004, with the Energy Policy Act, the federal government gave a green light to things like fracking of methane and also waste to incineration as a viable energy source. Well, that was a bad decision. It was bad for all of our communities. That happened in 2004. So it is up to you, the city council and the city government, to take creative solutions, to come up with creative solutions to protect us when the EPA and the federal government are not. So what wind waste will say is that all the pollution, they are the single largest polluter in the whole of Baltimore City, the largest by far. They will say that their pollution is not what's making people sick, it's other people's pollution. And now we have CSX saying the same thing about PM 2.5 particulate matter from coal dust, which, CSX says, oh, well, there's PM 2.5, but it's not our coal. Well, whose coal is it? We know that it's coal. But the larger point here is that the EPA does not protect us. World Health Organization does not recommend waste incineration. They don't recommend exposure to PM 2.5 coal dust. It's up to the city council to step in here. So I have a small proposal for a pilot, and the proposal is this: that we get 5 high school student interns, and we allot them 5 recycling garbage truck crews and trucks, and we put that team together. And we give them a goal of gathering the yard waste every other week for 5,000 city volunteers. Those city volunteers will watch a 5-minute YouTube video that tells them how to keep PFAS out of this organic stream. And, I bet you within a couple weeks, I bet you within a couple weeks, they can come up with a plan that will work and that we can all do. As far as the infrastructure needed to compost, as long as you keep PFAS and other contaminants out of the stream, all you need is a field and a bulldozer or a front end loader, okay? So this is not complicated stuff. The city is delaying. I don't know why, but it's time to take action, and we can solve this problem now. The yard waste is the lowest, is such low hanging fruit, but the pilot that I just described will work. And so definitely pass this bill. The final thing I would like to do is answer Mr. Conway's question about what goes into those blue bins. Well, the fact is that the plastic that goes into those blue bins only, no matter how little or much it's contaminated, regardless of how careful people are about what plastic they put in those blue bins, 95% of it is not recycled. It may go somewhere else to get burned. It may get burned here, but it's not being recycled. That's 95%. So I applaud the city in suing Coca-Cola and other perpetrators. But we all need to get moving on this. There are people dying from floods in the Midwest. People can't even insure their homes in Florida. This is madness, and you all are not doing enough. DPW is a huge barrier. They're a huge problem. They need to put on notice that their management needs to turn around fast, or they need to be replaced. This hearing, the things we are talking about, every single year I've been in the city, we've been having the same conversation, and we've been hearing the same.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much for your
very much.
testimony.
Sorry that sounded like venting, but this is very enraging. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. We're going to go to David Brosh.
You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, members of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you for a few minutes in support of CB 230466. My name is David Brosh. I live in University Park, Maryland, near the University of Maryland College Park campus, and I'm a resident of the Prince George's County. I'm also a former employee of Baltimore's Department of Housing for more than 2 decades. I think of Baltimore as a second home and want the best for the city. I'm here today because I'm a member of the Prince George's County Solid Waste Advisory Commission, which is concerned about how the county manages what residents, businesses, and organizations discard, whether it be food waste, yard trim, or anything else that ends up at the end of its useful life. Even though a commissioner, today I speak to you not for the commission, but rather just as a private citizen. Prince George's County does not do any incineration, but materials not recovered or recycled go to our landfill at Brown Station. Any items that is organic will eventually break down over time in the landfill and produce methane, a potential greenhouse gas. Some of this methane is recovered and reused, some escapes into the atmosphere, and for safety reasons, some gets flared, producing non-explosive CO2, but also a greenhouse gas. My county has actually initiated some very good programs that are reducing the effects of greenhouse gases on our climate and are extending the life of our landfill. And I think that's an important thing to remember. They include a county-wide recycling program, a brand new residential compost collection program, and the East Coast's second largest composting facility that accepts organics not only from the county, but from Northern Virginia, and even compostables from as far away as Baltimore. The way each jurisdiction manages solid waste affects all of us and is an important way to fight climate change. I was just reading one of Sunday's Washington Post front page stories that describes the scorching temperatures that the Northern Hemisphere is now experiencing, with over 1,000 temperature-breaking records in the last week alone. Scientists claim that this is a result of human-caused global warming activities. What to do? One thing that Prince George's County is doing is removing huge amounts of organics in the form of food and yard waste that ordinarily or otherwise would end up in our landfill, and instead compost these throwaways and converting them back into a soil amendment. Our compost facility is handling over 80,000 tons annually, and I believe the goal would be over 100,000 tons. And there is a plan to expand the existing facility. Rather than resort to incineration at Bresco, which is a 20th century technology that was producing tremendous amounts of waste heat, CO2, and air pollution, I ask you to begin using the 21st century proven compost methods that clean air, save landfill space, and provide a soil amendment for city gardens and public works projects. We are all part of this global environmental problem that may only get worse and will burden our children and our grandchildren. There are solutions out there for us, and we need to embrace and utilize them. I would recommend that members of the council make a trip to the organics composting facility near Upper Marlboro to see it in operation. The staff of the Maryland Environmental Services that runs the facility gives tours regularly. I would be happy to help make that happen. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. We're going to go to Jennifer Combs.
Hi, am I with you? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Jennifer Kunze, I'm a District 13 resident and I'm the Maryland Organizing Director with Clean Water Action. Here to say that yard waste composting is something that Baltimore City should have been doing a long time ago and needs to start doing much sooner than 2032. There's not a single other county in Maryland that incinerates its yard waste. And before I dive in, I'd like to direct the council to the sign-on testimony we submitted, signed by 23 organizations in support of this bill, as well as Clean Water Action's technical comments that have a lot of the detail about the implementation details and benefits of the bill. But first, I want to bring up something that's gone mostly unaddressed so far. We've been focusing a lot on the 2/3 of yard waste that gets disposed of in the city that's in the residential sector, stuff that we as residents put out that's hauled to the incinerator by DPW. But 1/3 of disposed yard waste is in the commercial sector that's hauled by private haulers with their own contracts with businesses and institutions. According to the Less Waste Baltimore study, Less Waste Better Baltimore study with data from 2017, noting Councilman Dorsey's comments about not having timely data. But going from that data, there's 15,000 tons per year of commercial waste going to the incinerator. A lot of commercial yard waste, though, already gets composted, diverted to private composting facilities. And this is diverting all that commercial yard waste is something that can happen. The Less Waste Better Baltimore plan specifically calls out that commercial yard waste is something that won't get addressed by DPW's programmatic changes, and that the City Council needs to pass legislation in the form of both incentives and mandates to get that commercial yard waste, 15,000 tons per year, diverted to composting. So the council should absolutely ban yard waste from the commercial sector and the residential sector, but the commercial sector at the moment, soon. And this will spur new business development and composting in the private sector, just like some state legislation is doing, as Director Richardson spoke to. So this is absolutely a step that the council can take now, and that Less Waste Better Baltimore calls for the council to take. My second point, I can answer part of the question about some of the cost savings that we will achieve when we stop incinerating our yard waste. That's because we pay a fee per ton of waste that DPW hauls to Bresco. And the amount of that fee is laid out in the contract for the duration of the contract. And if we take that DPW is hauling 36,000 tons of waste to Bresco each year, that means that this year we're paying $2 million in fees to Bresco just for that yard waste alone. And that means that if we were to implement this bill on the original timeline implementation deadline in the bill, rather than the administration's proposed amendment, that accumulates to over $15 million in savings by 2032 through not having to pay Bresco to burn our yard waste. Another benefit of doing that will be that the Less Waste Better Baltimore plan says that implementing organic waste diversion will create 250 jobs for Baltimore City residents. We will not achieve that without diverting our yard waste from the incinerator. And for my last point, I'd just like to address the comments from the Finance Department and the administration about looking to make this cost neutral. It is completely unacceptable for the administration to insist that any new diversion infrastructure be cost neutral. The council needs to question that logic and insist on a change. We don't expect the landfill to be cost neutral. We don't expect the incinerator to be cost neutral. Why would the city only expect that the good things that we want to attract and build be cost neutral? looking for a parallel in the transportation sector, that's just like people saying that public transit has to have fare box recovery. We can only build it if we're going to make that revenue back. But we have endless money to spend on building new highways in the counties, but not public transit here in Baltimore. It's the exact same logic. The city spends endless money on the landfill. The city spends money on the incinerator. The city just approved a nearly $4 million increase to the Bresco budget just this month. The city needs to actually devote real money to zero waste infrastructure and not just be saying, oh, we'll build it if a grant comes in or if we figure out a new revenue stream. We need to do that. This is not optional. And if the city does not, Mayor Scott will not be meeting his commitments for zero waste. This approach from the administration is part of the reason why progress on zero waste infrastructure in the city has been so slow. The council cannot allow that to continue. Our budgets are our values, and if the city government is not budgeting to build zero waste infrastructure, what that communicates to residents is that the city does not value progress on zero waste. So we need to build this infrastructure. We need to commit to it. We need to actually do it and bake it into the capital budget. And so passing this legislation is really an important step that the council can take. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We do not have any other virtual attendees who have their hands up or are using the raise hand function at this time. So that's going to conclude our public testimony today. I want to thank all of I want to first thank the sponsor. Our sponsor, Councilman Dorsey, has a few additional questions, and he's going to get to ask them at this time.
Thank you. For DPW, we have a law that's been in place since 1993 that prohibits the disposal of recyclable or compostable materials, specifically at Quarantine Road. This was enacted shortly after we acquired and opened up the Quarantine Road facility because we were exceeding our daily projections for tonnage of waste there and wanted to prolong the life of the landfill. I've been up onto that mountain of waste and dumped stuff myself. There's no monitoring of what materials go in there. Is there any credible claim that can be made that we actually are monitoring to make sure that we're not landfilling recyclable or compostable materials there?
City Councilman Antoine Bird, Chief of Disposal Services. I'm responsible for Quarantine Road landfill. So we do have measures in place to monitor what materials is coming in, particularly at the scale house. We do independent checks and verifications of everything that comes through. More importantly, at the site where we're doing the actual tipping, we have laborers that are responsible for monitoring the waste streams that come in as well. You know, when it comes to waste, there are some challenges that would prohibit us from being able to effectively say that there's zero recyclable materials or compostable materials that come through. However, with regards to entire loads that would be recyclables or compostable, we do not take those.
So only if it's entire loads?
Once they're mixed with waste streams, there's no way for us to actually effectively pull those out.
Thanks. That's essentially what I thought. It's always disheartening to be a part of a body that passes laws that don't get upheld. I think it's important to put that on the record, though. For the law department, as we've heard discussion about vendors and other governments from other jurisdictions and the commercial sector also disposing of waste at the Bresco incinerator, it occurs to me that I think even the way that this bill is written, because it's modeled from the language of the law, the 1993 law that I was just referencing, which just says like no compostable materials or recyclable materials can be disposed of at the Quarantine Road specifically. And so all this bill really does is extend that to any landfill or incinerator in the city. I understand that we have the legal ability to do that, I guess, with Quarantine Road because we own it and operate it ostensibly, you know, even if it's not being upheld. Is there any legal ability for us to say that this stuff can't be incinerated by a private entity in the city?
I do not know the answer to that question, but I'm happy to go back and research it and get back to you.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No more questions? Okay. We're going to be convening a future hearing on this item. I do again want to thank the sponsor for bringing both of these hearings with us today, our agency representatives who joined, panelists from the first hearing, as well as everyone who did testify. At this time, the hearing is in recess. Thank you.